Haha! You've activated my trap card! Now you must sit back and enjoy this top 10 countdown. Traps have been around since the beginning of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, and ever since then, they've been very annoying to play against. They stop your opponent's biggest plays, they destroy their toughest monsters, and they give them a hard time so you can retaliate with full force. Today we're going to be looking at the top 10 trap cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! For this countdown, we chose not to include archetype-specific cards, but cards that can be used in almost any deck. Hopefully after watching this video, you might even make a few changes to your deck, but let's start the countdown. Number 10. Bottomless Trap Hole. When your opponent summons a monster with 1,500 or more attack, destroy that monster, and if you do, banish it. Trap Hole is a classic card in Yu-Gi-Oh! And Bottomless Trap Hole makes it even better. This means when your opponent summons a monster, you can banish it completely. This will stop your opponent from bringing out their really strong card, and if you know your opponent's deck really well, you can time it appropriately to wait until your opponent brings out their strongest card, sending it directly out of play, most likely not to be seen again because it's banished. Number 9. The Scrap Iron Scarecrow. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, target the attacking monster and negate the attack. Also, after that, set this card face down instead of sending it to the graveyard. Scrap Iron Scarecrow is useful because it's renewable. You can continuously use it to stop one attack per turn. Considering your opponent's most likely going to be attacking you for the entire duel, you'll be able to use Scrap Iron Scarecrow until your opponent uses a card to get rid of it. Whether that's a Mystical Space Typhoon, Twin Twisters, or a card effect, they'll be wasting it to get rid of your Scrap Iron Scarecrow. Or, it might not be a waste at all, because Scrap Iron Scarecrow also stops them from snowballing. A lot of combos rely on you clearing your opponent's field and destroying monsters. This stops your opponent from doing that. And it gives you time to set up your own combos to retaliate. And generally trap cards are meant to help you retaliate. This'll do just that for a very long time. Number 8. Torrential Tribute. When a monster is summoned, destroy all monsters on the field. Torrential Tribute is powerful, dangerous, and downright risky. Not only does it take out your opponent's monsters, but your monsters as well. It's Dark Hole in a trap card. However, it can only be prompted when something's summoned. Fortunately for you, you're probably only going to want to use it when your opponent summons a very powerful monster. This card's very useful when you're trying to get your opponent's monster killed and you don't have anything important on your side of the field. However, it's not really a fun time when you do have something important on the field. Luckily, you can choose whether to activate it or not to activate it, and that call is completely up to you. One more downside is that it won't destroy monsters that can't be destroyed by card effect, because, well, that's exactly what it does. Other cards in this countdown will find ways around that, but for now, Torrential Tribute's number 8. Number 7. The Compulsory Evacuation Device. Target one monster on the field, and return that target to the hand. Quite simple. This is a classic type of trap card that revolves around destroying one opponent's monster. However, it doesn't exactly destroy it. It just sends it back to the hand. But this is a good thing, because a lot of effect monsters have the effect that they can't be destroyed by card effects. This technically gets around that because it doesn't destroy them, it sends it back to the hand. Considering a lot of these powerful monsters are Xy's and Synchros and Fusions, it will send it back to the extra deck, which essentially makes it completely useless once again, until the opponent summons it. Also, this can just stop any opponent's powerhouse that they are trying to destroy you with, which is always a good thing. Compulsory Evacuation Device is very simple, but very effective in just about any deck. Number 6. Dimensional Prison. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, target that attacking monster and banish the target. This card is very similar to the previous card on this countdown, Compulsory Evacuation Device, being that it takes out your opponent's most powerful monster and gets rid of it. The benefit to Dimensional Prison over the last card is that it banishes the target instead of just sending it back to the hand. This also gets around effects that prevent the monster from being destroyed. However, instead of just having it go back to the hand or extra deck, it is banished completely, meaning most decks will not be able to see this card come back ever again. It'll stop your opponent's plays and prevent them from happening again. Number 5. Skill Drain. Activate by paying 1,000 life points. the effects of all face-up monsters on the field are negated while those monsters are still face-up on the field, but their effects can still be activated. Skill Drain essentially is a choice you have to make. Are your opponent's effects stronger or are your effects stronger? If your deck completely relies on your effects, well, this might not be the right card for you, but I find Skill Drain a great card to put in your side deck, because even if your effects are important, your opponent's effects may be even more important for them. The reason Skill Drain can be good even if you do have effects is because you choose when to activate it. If your opponent starts playing a few effects that are setting up their field for a big play, you can activate Skill Drain right then and there, meaning all of their effects are cancelled and whatever they were about to do is left out in the open. Now, this is also very useful if you play it in the late game after you've already set yourself up with powerful monsters. Once again, this will stop your opponent's moves from happening, and your powerful monsters can essentially just do what powerful monsters do and destroy anything that comes in their way. Number 4. Fairy Box. When your opponent's monster declares an attack, toss a coin and call it. If you call it right, the attacking monster's attack becomes 0 until the end of the battle phase. During each of the standby phases, pay 500 life points or destroy this card. Okay, so Fairy Box might not be seen in a lot of competitive play, but it might just be my favorite trap card, so deal with it. Fairy Box is actually really good, because much like Scrap Iron Scarecrow earlier, it stays on the field for as long as you want. Now, you do have to pay 500 life points a turn, but in most competitive duels, 500 life points is a small price to pay. I think the reason most people don't use Fairy Box is because it's chance. It's a 50-50 chance if it's going to work or not. However, this can affect every monster on your opponent's side of the field, meaning all you need is a very weak monster on the field to stop your opponent completely. This will make it so even a tiny weak card like Little D can destroy a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon with the flip of a coin. It's a 50-50 chance. And of course, if your opponent has 0 attack points, that means they die and you deal a lot of life points to them. Well, not necessarily with the Little D, but you get the idea. Fairy Box is really good at stopping your opponent's powerful monsters, and more importantly, it stops them from choosing to attack. Because mentally, your opponent doesn't want to take that 50-50 chance. Sure, it might be worth it, but do they want to risk their powerful monster to stop you? Probably not, meaning you can set up your own play to counterattack. Number 3. Quaking Mirror Force. And Drowning Mirror Force. And actually sometimes regular Mirror Force. And in certain situations, Storming Mirror Force. You know what, instead of making this countdown all about Mirror Force and why they're all good in certain situations and could probably have multiple positions on this countdown, let's just focus in on the one that I think is the best, and that's Quaking Mirror Force. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, change all attack position monsters your opponent controls to face-down defense position. Monsters changed to face-down defense position by this effect cannot change their battle positions. So generally, Mirror Forces focus on one thing, and that's stopping your opponent from attacking and clearing their field. What makes Quaking Mirror Force interesting is instead of clearing the field, it keeps all of those monsters on the field. It puts them in face-down defense position where they cannot attack or activate their effects. Considering a lot of powerful monsters rely on their effects, this is very handy, and most importantly, what stands Quaking Mirror Force above the rest is it is very hard to counter. Many monster effects will protect them from different Mirror Forces, but not Quaking Mirror Force, since it doesn't destroy it, it doesn't banish it, it doesn't send it back to the hand. No, Quaking Mirror Force lets them stay on the field, but it changes their battle position, making them essentially useless. Not only that, but it clogs up their field, stopping your opponent from potentially making plays to come back from it. Meaning, you have plenty of time to set up your own combos, and get your own powerful attack monsters, powerful effects, and everything you need to retaliate and take down your opponent. All the Mirror Forces are good, but Quaking Mirror Force deserves a place in just about every deck. Number 2. Dimensional Barrier. Declare one monster type. Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Exi, or Pendulum, and for the rest of this turn, neither player can special summon monsters of the declared type. Also, negate the effects of all monsters of that type while they're on the field. You can only activate one Dimensional Barrier per turn. Dimensional Barrier does the thing every traps wish they could. Stops everything. Now generally, traps are to stop your opponent from advancing, and this does exactly that. If they're trying to summon something, you can essentially just stop it in its place. Of course, all of those crazy combos of cards were listed in the card itself. So if your opponent has a lot of XZ cards, Dimensional Barrier. If they're running a Ritual deck, Dimensional Barrier. If they have a bunch of Pendulum cards on the field that they summoned in one turn that all have crazy effects that are going to stop you, one Dimensional Barrier stops all of their effects from happening. So this gives you a little bit of wiggle room. Now the only downside is this is just for one turn, so your opponent can come back with a very similar play next turn. However, often in competitive duels, one turn is all you need to turn things around. Number 1. Solemn Warning. When a monster would be summoned, or a spell card, trap card, or monster effect is activated that includes an effect that special summons a monster, pay 2,000 life points and negate that summon or activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Solemn Warning is essentially a more convenient version of Dimensional Barrier. You can do even more with this, stopping spell cards and trap cards, stopping special summoning, and stopping effects. Essentially, anything your opponent's going to do to give you a really hard time can be stopped. Now, Solemn Warning does have a very steep price of 2,000 life points, but once again, in a lot of competitive duels, that's completely worth it to play. Solemn Warning is limited to one card, so its counterpart, Solemn Strike, is often also useful in a deck. Solemn Strike is just about as good as Solemn Warning, but once again, I didn't want to put, pretty much the same card in the countdown. Solemn Warning is something I think everyone should run in their deck, especially in the current meta, because people are constantly special summoning, constantly activating devastating effects. And if you know what kind of deck your opponent's running, you can time this to take out multiple of their things at once, and stop any type of combo before it even happens. Although Solemn Warning, as well as every other card in this countdown, can be good in many situations, there's tons of other trap cards that are good in many other situations. If you think I missed any trap card in this countdown, make sure to let me know what card in the comments, and let me know why you think it deserves a spot in this countdown. Thank you everyone for watching this video. If you enjoyed the top 10 and agree, make sure you get a pinky on that like button. If you disagreed, well, you can dislike if you want. But also, if you want to see any other top 10s, make sure to let me know what other countdowns you want to see in the comments below. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.